Man, I'm telling you, man, you're sitting here reaching out to these prospects. They ain't responding. They're not get booking as many appointments with you. And life is getting pretty frustrating at this point, right? Whether you're a BDR, you're an AE, or you're a sales leader, you know that difficulty, you know the challenge. And it seems like, especially with the economy like tightening up, people are a little bit more concerned about making a decision. But how do we go about building pipe effectively? What are some things that are working right now? And on this episode, we're going to give you exactly that. Ooh, wee, it's gonna be good. Yes, sir. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. If this is your first time listening to our podcast or watching one of our videos, you know what I'm going to be telling you, what this podcast is all about. And it's designed specifically for you. It's specifically tailored to help you, one, build pipe, and two, convert pipe. We want to help you to build twice as many, 3 times as many deals in your pipeline that are actually real deals effective. And we're going to give you strategies and tools and ideas in all of our episodes to help you with that. And then the other side of content that we provide, we teach you how to convert those deals at a faster rate than before. Because again, it's tough these days. You need growth, but you need to also grow effectively. How do we do that? Well, that's why we're here at TSC. We want to give a big shout out to our sponsors as well. They're helping us out, and we hope that you take advantage of them. Now, the main show today, the main individual we're going to hear from today, the one and only Ari Brinson. He's somebody we brought back on a podcast. He and I connected about some mid last year, and we were connecting with one of his colleagues, Jen Allen, who actually recommended him to be a guest on our podcast. And we talked to him then. At that point, he was a BDR and worked with the BDRs, and now he's received some kind of promotion and doing pretty well for himself right now.
I actually just joined this role in January of the new year, and it's an outbound sales manager role. And in that, basically what I'm in charge of is managing the sellers, the frontline sellers that we have on our team, specifically the SDRs.
So like Ari and his team, one of the things that many of us are facing, as I talked about a little bit earlier, is in the beginning, is that we are trying to get in touch with prospects. The stats, again, don't lie. People are sending more emails as sales professionals, sending more emails, but we're not getting as much replies. We're not getting appointments solidified. We're not getting people who are it's not as easy to sell as it was when things were going really well for many different organizations. Ari and his team saw this as well in their organization, that they could do things better. How could they improve? And it was fascinating what they did as an organization. They sat down at the end of the year, they reviewed what was working, what wasn't working, and the results or the outcome of that was quite interesting.
So, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? When you're looking at your total revenue that you brought in from the sales team, most of that is more likely going to come from inbound rather than outbound. Because if you think about it, the clients that are enlisting you or contacting you firsthand, they are going to be more likely to convert on a closed won deal, right? Rather than us having to do the cold call and the cold outreach and reframing them on the phone. Those sales cycles tend to be a lot longer, and it's just harder to win over those specific types of people who aren't necessarily looking for your solution or your services. So we saw that number, and our outbound number in comparison to our inbound number was significantly lower. And moving forward, what we were doing is that in terms of setting outbound meetings for our account executives and for our sales managers going forward, a lot of times those were resulting in deals just being lost very early in the sales cycle, which ends up being, a waste of time for the account executives, as well as a waste of, outreach effort from the BDX's perspective. So what I've been doing along with my sales leadership team is creating and looking at ways, right, that one, we can target the right personas, the right people to meet with in order to have a higher chance or a higher propensity of these deals moving forward into those closed won, or at least later into the sales cycle, right? Speaking to people that were actually want to speak with us, and there is a chance that a deal can move forward.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited to dive into that component there and to, pick your brain on that a little bit. So let's talk about that pipeline conversion from outbound. What was some of the challenges you guys were seeing comparative to so looking at the last year, you were looking at the numbers. What are some of the findings that you guys saw?
Sure. So, and I think this happens with a lot of sales teams where you get stagnant in terms of you have a set number of, specifically on the SDR level, you have a set number of meetings that you have to have scheduled, right? And you're just looking at what is my commission going to look like and what is my roadmap to promotion look like? In that end, that's not really a sustainable way of one, career development, right? And two, scheduling those quality opportunities that we're looking for. So, as a result of that, what ends up happening is that the SDRs or the frontline sellers just end up pushing out as much content as possible, whether it's generic or personalized. And whoever raises their hand, right? And in that sense, we're able to schedule with them. What we found though is, and I'm sure you see this on your end, that the sales environment is literally changing beneath our feet as we speak today, right? And there's a lot of different factors that mainly go into the economic side of things, where just people aren't necessarily ready to move forward with such a big sales methodology or a sales idea that's going to change their landscape as a whole. So we're getting less of those people that are willing to raise their hand when we send out content. So what we thought is, okay, and this is obvious, right? Obviously, you have to personalize a little bit more, and those people will be more likely to meet with you. But in that end, what happens if they don't appreciate the research that you've done? Or what happens with those organizations that just simply aren't ready to buy? So we've been putting more of an emphasis on qualifying opportunities, right? And looking at organizations to determine, is this even worth starting outreach to begin with? Let's be more efficient with our time. And if we do find organizations that we think have a higher chance of wanting to meet with Challenger, let's make sure that that messaging is as tailored as we can possibly get, and that we're using all the channels necessary from cold calling to emailing to even LinkedIn to make sure that we get our foot in the door.
Now, like any other sales leader out there, when you find a problem, your goal right out the gate is to figure out a way to implement an effective solution. Now, what Ari and his team did, I really like that concept. They eventually broke down into looking at the two areas: what we can do to help our BDRs improve, and what we can help to assist our account executive to improve. Both of them, however, as we go throughout this episode, you'll hear and see what they did with the BDR side and how they did it with the account executive. But both of them start off with one similar thing: make sure we're connecting with the right people. And relevance play a very important part in that.
Sure. So Sam McKenna is someone out there on LinkedIn who uses this method, and I think it's very effective. It's called the Show Me You Know Me campaign, where basically you have a main foundation of an email. So let's say you're targeting the business services organizations. For the most part, 80% of those organizations are going to have the same value prop or the same roadblocks that they're running into. So confirming, one, that the value prop is scalable to those organizations and creating sort of a foundational email, and then adding on to it is a couple lines of personalization, preferably at the beginning of the email, right, which is where the prospect, the first 30 seconds or the first couple sentences of the email are the most important, because they determine whether they're going to continue to read the email or if it's going to go into the junk folder. So at the beginning of the email, right, and then at the end of the email, your call to action always has to be direct and strong, but you want to tie that into the personalization of what you're seeing on an organization standpoint.
100%.
So taking those couple lines of personalization so that we're not spending all day looking at annual reports or looking for CEO's comments. And a lot of times we see this, right, where there isn't necessarily that information that's publicly available. So what do you do in that situation, right? It's important that as long as you can find that little piece of personalization that gives them a reason to want to meet with you, because I see a lot of mistakes that frontline sellers make is that they personalize just to personalize, thinking that, okay, the prospect sees that I personalize, so they're just going to meet with me just based off the fact that I spent an extra 30 minutes on this account or doing my account research. That's not the case. If executives, they're already on a time constraint. So they want to know, okay, you did the personalization. How does that tie into the solution that you have? And why do we need to move forward on this now? What we like to call the cost of inaction, right? Reframing them on the urgency of wanting to move forward on this deal.
Relevance, relevance, relevance. You know how big I am on relevance. Obviously you heard me allude to it there, but on a past episode, I addressed just this idea. It just feels like more and more of our buyers, they know the play that the salespeople are running. They absolutely understand that you're going to put them in a cadence and you're going to try to nurture them and you're going to try to get the appointment. And if you're doing this and every other sales professional is doing this, you got to make sure you got to change up the game. You got to use something that's a little bit more different. You got to use something that's a little bit more effective. And the concept, that's why I love what you mentioned about that show me you know me idea, but also is this notion of how relevance is going to beat out the randomized personalization every single time. Personalization is important, but it got to be irrelevant, and it got to be something that's going to be meaningful to the buyer, that's going to help them. Like, I mean, I can't look at somebody's profile and just say, hey, you went to University of Miami. Perhaps I can look at the profile and see what they're posting or who they're interacting with and start dialogues and conversations relevant to that. This makes such a big difference when it comes to the idea of relevance. What I like about Ari and his team as well is that they go back to the science approach, figure out what's working. As we talked about LinkedIn, I felt that we were kindred spirits because the topics and the way that he highlighted what they're doing just falls in line with things that I'm seeing and things that we're doing right now.
Absolutely. And I think the mistake that we make is when we see that, it's so easy to say, oh, let's just create a general framework and then add a couple lines of personalization. And it sounds easy when you say it, but the actual process of doing it is very challenging. It took me, honestly, probably a quarter in terms of repetition, going back and forth with my AE, with my account executive, looking at these different accounts in order to feel comfortable where now I can do that on my own and reach out to these organizations. And I believe that I have a good enough reason for us to want to connect, but then it also ties into reaching out to the right people, which a lot of times we don't do. We just take everyone in an organization, right? That's whether it's on the sales side or the marketing side, whatever role or persona that you're looking to target, depending on your organization, and we just send it to all of them. And sometimes that works. Sometimes you do get hand raisers that come back and it's like, hey, I am interested. But why not, if you're going to tailor information, tailor it to the role, tailor it to the leader. Why are you just simply tailoring it to the organization?
So, can you give me a specific example of how you guys do that?
Sure. So a lot of times, let's say we're doing a one-on-one. I'm doing a one-on-one with one of my SDRs,
Yeah.
and they're giving me an organization and an account, and it's just like, Ari, I've been looking all over Google. Like, I looked all on their website. I can't find any publicly available information. It looks like it's a private organization. There's not a lot of content. They haven't done any mergers or acquisitions. There's no go-to-market strategy that's available. And I listen to them, right? I hear it out. And then I go, okay, well, how many sales leaders are at the organization? Oh, maybe 3 or 4. Okay, have you tried looking at their LinkedIn? What do you mean? Going through their posts for the last 2 months. Maybe they posted something around, maybe they're looking to expand their team, right? Or maybe they have a new product launch that they promoted on their personal LinkedIn account. Let's check it out. And a lot of times when you go on that, you find these little tidbits, right? Whether it's even, it doesn't even have to be related to the organization. They might just be sharing articles or resources around new go-to-market strategies to identify moving forward into 2023 is an example of one. Had a conversation with one of the SDRs a couple weeks ago about that, where they were sharing content around how they can effectively build their team to have conversations in this new sales environment. And I asked him, do you think Challenger will be able to help with that? Yeah, I think so. Okay, then why don't we reach out? And then 2 weeks later, that person we're in the process of meeting with them and their sales leaders at that team in order to evaluate if Challenger is a right fit.
I love that. The going deep into those individual accounts, those individual prospects, or at the organization, is what you're sharing. It's like there's money in that. Like there's literally money in that. LinkedIn has the new Sales Navigator, the Spotlight feature, and I love that, where we can search and see people who have posted on the platform the past 30 days. So we usually look for people who are new VPs of sales and have posted on LinkedIn in the past 30 days within a certain like geographical area or industry that we're going after or whatnot. But the the power behind that again is like what you're saying. We can use that as our personalization idea, where it's not like spending hours going through stuff, but it makes it that now when I reach out, it's relevant and engaging on that post, not just saying, "Oh, congrats" or "Yay, great," like really giving a thoughtful comment on that post, or even sending a personal LinkedIn connection request, time back to that post, increase the chance of them responding to you favorably. And then now when you have that relevance and an engagement, it like catapults your email response rate now.
And there's a lot of nuances to that, Donald,
Yeah.
where when you say that, right, when we're talking about the LinkedIn outreach that we do or the conversations that we have,
Yeah.
people think, oh, so am I pitching to prospects on LinkedIn? No,
No.
not at all. And I'm sure you get this in
All
my
the
new
time.
role now, right? I get it to some degree and I'm starting to see it. And it's honestly fascinating to me where it's like, oh, wow, okay. That's a lot more salesy to me now in this leadership position than it was when I was an SDR. But I'm sure you're to the magnitude that you get it, it's probably a lot worse, where people think just because you leave a comment, right, or you react to their post on LinkedIn, that that's an invitation for them to pitch you their solution through LinkedIn.
No.
That's not it at all. The goal for me and my team when we're reaching out to you on LinkedIn is to get our foot in the door.
Yep.
So a lot of times what I do is I'll even send a voice memo where it's kind of self-deprecating, where I'll be like, I know, listen, yeah, I am a typical SDR. I didn't want to leave you just a generic message that you normally probably get and probably flood your inbox. So I thought this voice memo would do.
Yeah.
You know, and a little like looking forward to enjoying your content. Hopefully you do the same with me. Hopefully our paths cross in the future at some point, but if not, have a good rest of the week. And a lot of times you'll get prospects that respond back to you in that sense that are like, hey, really appreciate this. Haven't heard this before. Like, looking forward to connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that instance, when I then send them an email or give them a cold call in the future, they'll be like, oh, Donald Kelly, or oh, Ari
Yep.
Brinson. Yeah, you sent me that cool LinkedIn message you sent me that cool LinkedIn voice memo on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'll hear you out. Yeah, I
Yep.
got a couple minutes. What's going on?
Oh,
Right? So it's just to get your foot in the door. It's not to pitch.
so now you understand what their BDX are doing internally. You get a grasp, you get an understanding about how this is changing culturally. For the BDX, that's normal. In your case, a BDR or SDR. But what about your account executive? And that was my concern as Ari and I were talking. Like, how do you make that change with your AEs? And what he shared about how they started to do that was fascinating. I think this is something that you could take and apply to in your organization. It's pretty much going back to some old school way of selling. Check it out.
We used to do the traditional one-to-one pairing where it's one AE has one BDX that supports them, and they're doing the outbound sort of outreach for that account executive. Now it's split up where we each have a number of accounts between 200 and 300 that we get on a quarterly basis, or whenever we run out of accounts and need more, whatever comes first. And the AEs do their own outreach in comparison to what the BDXs do. So the AEs are now doing their cold calling, they're doing their cold emailing, right? They're connecting with people on LinkedIn, getting their foot in the door. And I think this way is a lot more beneficial because a lot of these AEs, right, have been BDXs or SDRs or BDRs at some point. And they have these higher level conversations with the prospects in order to close deals. So when they're doing their outreach, I found that there's this healthy dialogue between like them sharing best practices on what they've seen based off just history in general and what we can leverage, and us giving them more evolved techniques that we've picked up on since they've made the transition from SDR to now account executive. So there's that healthy dialogue that goes back and forth, and it only helps, specifically with personalization. Account executives, right? That's part of their job description, is that you want to personalize or build a solution that is customizable to whatever prospect or organization you're reaching out to. And that transfers over to outreach, where they're going to have an idea on like how to get to that deeper level of personalization that maybe a less tenured salesperson that was became an SDR 2 years ago would have. So it creates that best practice sharing and that healthy dialogue that I think benefits sales teams as a whole, rather than just putting it on one team to do And then as a result, you're then looking at the end of the quarter and it's just like, wow, our outbound conversion rate is really low. I wonder why.
Yeah. This is awesome. Did your AEs balk at this idea now that they have to do some of their outreach?
I mean, some did. I mean, put yourself in their position. It's understandable. Where I haven't done cold calling or emailing in probably a few years. And now we're going back and we have to, build a muscle that we haven't worked out in a few years. It's like, obviously there's going to be some hesitancy doing that. But I think as we're getting into it, they're realizing the benefits of it because now it's more time efficient. So they're not getting 30-minute meetings with people who aren't even in that decision-making spot or that have that decision-making capability, and ends up being a waste of time. They're doing the outreach for the people they want to connect with.
Listen, I love that idea. It's not saying that AEs need to do they're not going to get any leads or anything from their BDX or again BDR or SDR in your case, but in their case it's their BDX. It's not like they're going to not get any leads from them anymore. It's just that they're empowering their AEs to be more involved in that process. And this is a trend that I'm seeing over and over and over again. I feel that we went past that machine of just push BDRs to get everything set up and the AEs closed. Like we are still, that's still effective for many organizations. But to just have the BDX in their case, or in your case, the BDRs alone to do that work is not as effective. So we want to figure out ways that we can get those AEs involved a little more when it comes towards really making that seismic shift in your organization and improving your outreach. So there you can have both sides going. You just don't have people who don't know how to prospect anymore. And I love that idea behind it. Also, I like the results that they started to see. Check this out and see how he and his team started to see some results directly from these strategies, from the change with their BDX as well as the change with their AEs. The results now, what are some of it's been 4 months right now since you guys have 3 months since you guys have made this change. And then here we're recording this in March. What are some of the positive results that you guys have seen from switching to this concept? Or is it still too early to tell? I would love to hear any findings that you guys have.
Sure. So I think from an outreach perspective, the team, even from the less tenured members to the more tenured members, now I'm even looking at, before we even had this call, I was looking at their sequences on HubSpot, and all of them have that degree of personalization that I'm looking for. We've all bought into it. It took a month or a month and a half, right? We had to exercise that muscle, get used to it, but now we're starting to see it all come to fruition. And looking at our results now, we already have more meetings that are in the interest stage, right, of the sales cycle than we did of Q1 last year, from both an inbound and an outbound perspective, because now we're also qualifying these inbound leads. We have a better idea of how to do that in order to pass on to our account executives. So they're only speaking to people that have been vetted, for lack of a better word, in terms of, yes, this deal is likely to move forward. And not only for us, right, but it's a good use of time for the prospect as well.
Love it.
And that transparency goes a long way for both sides.
That's Mr. Ari Brinson, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, he has a lot of wisdom. I'm grateful I got a chance to connect with him and also connect with the Challenger organization to learn what they're doing to challenge the status quo and to, challenge some of the thinking that we've had. If you're finding value in this episode, again, I would encourage you to show him some love and connect with Mr. Ari Brinson.
I was going to say, you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn, Ari Brinson, first and last name. And I'm obviously new to this role, so I would love to compare observations with anyone out there. Always curious, always looking to see what's happening at other organizations as well. And if we're seeing the similar things, or if it's different, right? What are you seeing and what should we prepare for? Or what should we get ready for? So through LinkedIn, and then via that, we can go back and forth via email, whatever works.
Again, Ari, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Be sure to connect with him. Let him know that you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast. If this is your first time listening to our podcast, please consider subscribing to this podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. I know you will appreciate it as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can be notified whenever we have a new episode to drop, and you can get access to that. We want to help you 2 things. Again, build pipeline and to make sure that pipeline is healthy, and to close pipeline and close pipeline at a higher rate than you've ever closed before. We are dedicated towards this cause. Check out some of our program, our LinkedIn prospecting course. We guarantee that we're going to help you to start setting 3 appointments per week utilizing LinkedIn without spamming. Or check out our sales mastermind, where individual sales professionals like yourself get a chance to come and learn from other sales professionals in a perfectly designed small group setting that's going to help you to be able to maximize your learning experience. Check out all of our stuff. I'll be super grateful to have you take part. Also, check out our sponsors. They're giving you some amazing deals that can help you out in your sales effort. Ari and team over at Challenger, really appreciate you all. Hope this is able to help you improve your games. As always, I want you to raise your level of thinking. I want you to go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching.